Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. Before we get started with this weekend's service, I want to take a moment and introduce you to a friend of mine, Sudhir. Sudhir and his wife Akali and his two kids, Mika and Leah, have been coming to SCC for the last 7 years. We've become very good friends. Nancy and I have been to dinner and lunch with Sudhir and Akali. We've been in small group together, and of course, many of you know their children. The reason why I want to introduce you to Sudhir today is because he's facing some of the very things that we're going to be talking about in our study. This weekend's topic is, how do we face our fears? Especially, how do we face our fears with faith when we find ourselves kind of at a dead-end situation? God can rescue us from any situation, and Sudhir and Bakali have experienced this several times in their life. Sudhir, why don't you explain to everyone kind of how God brought you to America 7 years ago, and then specifically kind of how you found SCC?
Sure. We used to live in Singapore, and I was working there. We never really had any plans of specifically of moving to the United States. And all of a sudden, we got an offer from my company there to say, hey, would you like to move to the United States because we'd like you to continue what you're doing there in one of our offices here. So we kind of took a leap of faith, if you will, and we packed up and we left. In a span of about 2 to 3 months, everything was done from the time we decided to the time we landed here in Orlando.
Wow, quick move. Yeah. And how old were your kids at that time?
They were 12 and 13 at that time, so they came into middle school here.
Middle schoolers.
Yeah. Yeah. So we got here, and we didn't really pick this place or this town or this state specifically. My employer had an office here, so they essentially told us you can stay wherever you want to, any city in the country, because most of my work is anyway remote and involves a lot of travel, so it doesn't really matter. But we just decided to go to Lake Mary because we have an office there, and we didn't really put too much thought into it, is how I would put it. And it turned out that God brought us here for a very good reason,
right.
and we've never regretted that for a minute, really.
Yeah, so your very first Sunday in America, you started looking for a church.
Yes. We used to go to church regularly in Singapore, and one of the things that when we decided to move, was ask around in church if anyone knew a church they could recommend for us here in Lake Mary, since we knew that's where we were moving to, and no one could give us any specific church. So when we got here, the day after we landed, I just opened my laptop and Googled church. Seminole Community Church was the first
Wow.
result that came up. And so that's how we just decided. We didn't know there were several churches around in this area, and we later realized there were many more churches that were even closer to where we were living. But for some reason, Seminole Community Church is what came up, and we said, okay, let's go there that Sunday.
And you guys actually took a cab to church your first Sunday.
Yes. I mean, it was about, I guess it's about 3 miles away from,
right.
3 or 4 miles at the most from where we were living. And we didn't really know how far it was or what the issue was. So we just, we called a cab because that's kind of what we do regularly in Singapore. And we came to church that Sunday. Yeah.
So it cost you probably $30 or $40 to come to church.
Oh, yes, each way.
Each way. That was before Uber for sure.
That was before Uber. Yeah.
Well, you
And
guys got so plugged in, and of course, Mika and Leah in the wildfire program on Wednesday night, and then
yeah,
Uprising as they've grown into high school, and then we've done small group together and several Bible studies together.
yes,
And I remember it was 2 years ago you faced kind of one of these dead end situations that we're going to talk about because you were coming to the end of your 5 year kind of work stay. And
correct.
we were in the middle of 40 days of prayer.
Yes,
We had already been praying for
yes,
months
for months.
that there would be some kind of resolution with your green card status. Things weren't looking too good. Share with us how you processed through all of that.
Yeah, the visa that we came here on was a 5-year work visa. So we knew that at the end of 5 years, that term would be up, and the expectation was either we would leave. But since my employers had kind of wanted me to continue
Hmm.
to work, they applied for a green card for us with the intention that we'll be able to stay longer term when the green card comes through. But the green card wasn't, it was still under process, it wasn't approved, and the 5 years was coming up quickly. So there was no real avenue to extend that visa. And all other kind of options in terms of trying for a different type of visa hadn't really succeeded.
Hmm.
And so I remember we were supposed to, our visa was expiring January 31st
I remember.
of 2018, and in late December, um, we have the our company has immigration lawyers that they engage to do all the visa processing for us on our behalf. So the lawyers were looking at kind of all my qualifications and documents as they were putting together the papers, and then they came up and said, you really actually, we didn't realize this before, but you qualify for a different visa of a higher category that
Hmm.
allows you. So if we convert you to the higher category of skill level, then we can get you an extra 2 years. So that was like a last minute thing. They probably applied for that in early January, and we knew we had less than 30 days at that time.
Yeah, so
Um,
we were praying and praying and praying,
right,
but
and that
God
was
is never early, is he? Seldom, never late, but seldom early.
exactly right. And throughout the month of January, we were here for the 30 days of prayer. But at the same time, I don't think there was a single day that I wouldn't wake up and the first thing I would do is pull up my phone and check the status of the application to see
Right.
if anything has come through. And every single day it was just in process, and we just, I mean, we really had no other choice but to just to leave it to God, to trust in
Hmm.
God at that time, and that's kind of where we were until literally 2 days before the 31st. It was, yeah, I think it was probably a Saturday or something, yeah, one day before we came here for Sunday service,
Right.
and we got the approval for an extra 2 years on this new visa.
That was
And
one
that
of
was
those moments where our group just, our faith just soared because that was a real, we felt like that was a real, not only answered prayer, but a real miracle last second.
Oh yes, it was really last minute. Yeah, yeah,
And that brings us to kind of the dead end you're facing today. It's the end of that 2 years, isn't it?
exactly, right.
So here we are again. The green card is still in process.
Still in process. Yeah, we kind of figured, well, we have another 2 years. The green card should come in by then.
You would think.
Yeah, and no, so it's still in process, and we've reached the end of our 2 years. Um, and so literally April the 6th is the day my visa expires, and so
Right.
we were kind of going through that whole process again of preparing to leave, but this time with really no other option to extend or convert to another visa. The only thing that was possible was they said you have to go out of the country, live outside for a year, and then we can try and apply for that same visa again. Um,
And I'm
so that's
thankful you took my advice and decided to go to Costa Rica because I've always wanted to go to Costa Rica. So now I'll have somebody to come visit. So the plan has
yes,
been Costa Rica for a year, but then you found out you got to go back to India
correct.
to
Yes.
take care of a whole lot of paperwork,
Oh,
hopefully faster than our green card.
yeah. Yeah, my employers decided that I mean we have an office in Costa Rica, so they said, that might be good. It's a proximity to the United States, same time zone, not too far away to travel. So
Your pastor could come visit you.
yes, all that involved, and the weather's great. It seems like a nice place. So they said they offered me up a position there. But because we are originally from India, we hold Indian passports, we still needed to go back to India to process the visa. So our plan was all along that by the 6th or the 4th is when we were due to fly out. By the 4th of this month, we would fly back to India and then apply for the visa and then get to Costa Rica whenever that was ready, which would be about a month or so
So
after.
we've been praying that the green card would come through and praying that somehow your kids would be able to finish classes and graduate. Leah's a senior this year. She's
Yeah.
in the IB program. Seemed like all of this was going to be kind of derailed.
Yeah, exactly. We tried for extensions even for like a month or so to see if we can at least get to the middle of May, by which time Leah would have graduated and Mika would have finished the year in university. But there was no extension to be had. So essentially, we were in that position where we'd have to leave the country and our kids will have to withdraw from school and college literally 4 to 6 weeks before they were due to
Right.
graduate or complete the year after they worked so hard for the last several years
So
towards
many
that.
people have been praying, our college group, our high school group,
I
our
know.
staff, our small group, all your friends.
Yeah.
And God, in that verse, he talks about all things worked together for good for
For the
them
good.
who love him and are called according to his purpose. And even when bad things happen, God can bring good out of bad.
Absolutely. I mean, and this was one of those situations where I didn't even see a path forward.
Me neither.
And I remember because we were pretty much we started packing about a month ago and trying to get ready to leave the country, and we called a realtor in to kind of see if she can either sell a house or rent it out, and to just get her advice. And she came in, and one of the things she asked me was, "So are you sure you're leaving in April? And how sure are you?" And I said, let me put it this way: short of a miracle, yes, we will be
That is
we will
so
be out
true.
of here in April. And I couldn't think of another way to put it, because it literally was
Yeah.
the only. There was no realistic option for us to stay beyond this first week of April. We had tried everything from a legal point of view. The company had filed all kinds of applications and petitions to immigration. So it was really short of a miracle. There was no way we would be here beyond this week.
And then we find out, because of the worst thing that's ever happened, the COVID 19 virus,
Yes.
God, in your situation, is bringing some incredible good out of this.
Yeah. And that's so. Just literally over the last 2 weeks, of course, the situation's changed so rapidly for so many people and literally for everyone. But in our case, what happened was due to the coronavirus, the COVID-19 situation all over the world, India enforced a 20-day one travel ban.
Mm-hmm.
And I think unlike most other countries, India went one step further. They wouldn't even allow their own citizens to enter.
Right.
And that was key, because that meant we couldn't go to India. and just so rapidly over the last week or so, pretty much every other country has followed suit and enforced a travel ban. So which meant that we couldn't leave this country even if we wanted to. There were no planes flying, there were no international flights, and there's no country that was accepting anyone in.
So you're stuck here.
So we're stuck here. Yes.
I can't believe God has used this to
Yeah.
keep you guys here.
So we literally, I mean, India is closed its borders for almost the rest of this month, for the large part of April. And so we're stuck here for at least a month, it looks like. And so, in the midst of all this, I guess the silver lining has been that we've been able to have our kids complete school.
Yeah, so
The
Leah's
fact
going to
that
graduate,
yes, Leah's going to graduate.
and she's going to get her IB diploma even.
Yes,
Huge answer to prayer. I mean, this is like everything we've been asking for.
so
Mika gets
true.
to finish this semester at UCF.
Yes,
And you guys still may have to leave at the end of, well, whenever they all open it all up.
right.
But even if you have to be gone a year, you're going to, more than likely, high probability, you're going to be able to come back.
Yes, that's what it seems like. They're pretty positive that we'll be able to come back after a
And
year.
eventually that green card comes through, and I mean, because your kids have really, they're like Americans. They've grown up here.
Yeah,
They've
I mean,
grown up here.
it's the most formative years of their life have been here
Absolutely.
and literally in this church.
Yeah,
I think
no, they're
more
part
than
of our
anywhere
family.
else.
I told you could leave them with us. I know they won't let you do that.
Yeah.
But we would take your kids in, and so many people would line up to do that.
Yeah, we've been so thankful to the church and everyone who's prayed for us, who's helped us, who's been with us throughout this. And that was one of the biggest, I think, more than anything else, even when we talked about it as a family about leaving, I think the most painful part was not that I would leave my friends or miss school, but it was we would miss this church.
Yeah, it was painful for us
It
too,
was
to think that.
such a integral part of their lives, especially for Mika and Leah, because they would be here 3 to 4 times a week, spending time with their small group, with their college and high school groups, and so yeah, it was something that we would have sorely missed when we left.
When we were at dinner, the last time we got to go to dinner, and it looked like the inevitable was you guys are going to probably have to leave for a year. You said something that really touched me when you looked at me and you said, Pastor, we want to be where God wants us to be. We trust him, even if his path takes us where we don't want to go. And I think it's because you've lived through this in so many other ways.
Yes,
God's plan's best.
absolutely. Yeah.
As Vicali has said, God knows her better than she knows herself.
Yeah, yeah. I think we've learned the hard way that we've made so many plans over the years, and we've been really frustrated, angry, and dejected when things didn't go the way we wanted it to, or at least the way we planned it to go. But in hindsight, when we look back, wherever God took us was much better than what we had planned for ourselves.
Exactly. Well, I know this is really, for those who know your story, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We'll get together again and do this. Would you do this with me again?
Sure.
And because I want to
glad
talk
to do
about
that. Yes.
how God had a kind of a worldwide conspiracy to bring you to the Savior, and that's an
Yes.
incredible story we'll have to share sometime.
And that's part of the reason, I guess, that my faith is as strong as it is.
Absolutely.
And I trust God in everything, and wherever He's leading us, is where we want to be.
Well, you're an inspiration to me, and I hope an inspiration to so many people who are watching.